Okay, go on now. All right, perfect. Is it available on full screen now?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sonali, for inviting me. And hello, everybody. Thank you so much for taking your time out to attend my talk. Um, Today, we will be talking a lot about multimodal AI in robot-assisted assessments and primarily in child-centered settings. This talk is basically based on my doctoral work that I did in the University of Cambridge. But before I delve into AI, just a little bit about me. I am Nida. As you can see, my last 4 years have just been playing with robots. And that somehow led me to graduate from, a really, really good place because, well, what I did, I really, really enjoyed doing it. I got my PhD quite recently from the University of Cambridge. And before that, I was working and also studying at the National University of Singapore in biomedical engineering. Sonali and I did have a talk about this as well. My work was primarily about how biomedical signals can be used for olfactory perception or just understanding vigilance. But my talk today would be more on my doctoral work that I did in Cambridge, which was how social robots can basically help children open up. What is the potential of AI in assessing children's mental well-being, and how exactly, when we have all of these amazing technology out there, should they be integrated, how they can be integrated responsibly into this entire childcare network or in all across the world. But before I delve into that, just a little bit about the place that I called home for about 5 years. The reason being because we have a lot of science enthusiasts over here. No, this is not a travel pitch, but if you do happen to visit Europe on a conference, or if you are traveling to England, I would really recommend visiting Cambridge or at least spending a day here, just because there is just so much of scientific history that is there in just everyday places. What you see on your left is a very famous pub in England called the Eagle Pub. And this was where Wharton and Crick actually yelled, "Oh, we've discovered the secret of life," or something. Don't know the exact words. Probably they don't know it as well because they were in a pub. The middle two are from my own personal album. It was when I was visiting one of the colleges in Cambridge to give a talk, Gonville and Keys, and I just happened to look up and I was like, oh, wow, this was where Professor Stephen Hawking had his office. Obviously, it's been given to somebody else. I remember talking to the porters there, and they said that he considered this home. So some of the porters actually helped carry his body as well when he passed away. J.J. Thomson, when he discovered the electron, that was his lab is still there. I'm not sure if you can just visit that particular lab unless you know somebody, but you do see a glimpse of it if you've seen the movie The Theory of Everything, because they do describe it. Again, bunch of other historical things. One of my favorite places in Cambridge, which is the Bridge of Sighs on the top that you see, it's just beautiful. It's based on the original Bridge of Sighs. Charles Darwin's house is there. What you see at the bottom left is a mathematical bridge. I think it was made by Professor Michael Eldridge, but what was so great about it is basically when it was originally made, all the logs that you see, they were somehow balancing without any nails. So he had used physics and motion and just in general forces, and he had balanced the logs so intricately that they didn't need any nails. A bunch of students a few years later decided, oh, we've understood everything there is to know about the bridge, and we can definitely put it back together if needed. So they decided to take it apart, but unfortunately they couldn't put it back together. So now it's been held together by nails, but that wasn't the original idea. And yeah, just King's College Chapel, which has been there since I think the time of Henry VII or VIII, I can't remember. But when I consider Cambridge, I consider this building, which is very un-Cambridge-like because it has glass and air conditioning. And this is the Department of Computer Science. So this was home for the last 5 years where I did my research. And yeah, this is what I will be presenting today. So going into AI and what AI is, it's amazing. And we've spoken about this in our introduction as well. Like AI is just basically everywhere. And a lot of people think that it came about when the LLM revolution happened in 2023 or 2022, but that's not the case. It has been there since the time of 1980s, 1990s, since machine learning was basically in the field, and all of that could be considered as AI. So even before you started using ChatGPT for everything, you had Alexa, you had Siri, you had Google Assistant. So all of that basically comes under AI because you did rely on it quite a lot, and there was some sort of intelligence, there was some sort of pattern recognition that was happening. You're putting in some data and it's giving you some response. All of that is basically considered AI. Obviously, there are more recent AI when the LLM revolution happened, which is your GPT, Claude, which is used by Anthropic. I've told Microsoft's come out with something called as Copilot for Health, which is a very, very recent thing that Microsoft came out. I haven't really read the entire paper, but apparently that's supposed to help understand your health diagnosis as well. So I'm not sure what its capabilities are, but it's a very, very recent thing. So AI is basically everywhere and has been used everywhere for a long period of time as well. But when it comes to mental well-being, one of the questions that I was asked throughout my PhD and even in general while on, like, why do you need AI or like robots, which can be considered a form of embodied AI in well-being assessment of children? And one of the things, because a few collaborators on my project and two of my supervisors were basically from the current and the previous head of the Department of Psychology, and they were saying that they were conducting obviously psychological assessments at a massive scale. But one of the things that they were saying was children, especially younger children, they have very limited verbal ability. So first of all, these complex emotions like, you know, understanding mood and what's panic, for them, everything might just be considered, they're just sad. So what is panic and what is, you know, are they scared? Are they sad? So they have very basic information, understanding of what emotions are. And you're asking them to articulate that on a form. So they might, first of all, not understand what they're feeling. And even if they do understand, they might not have that verbal ability to kind of explain to the other person what exactly is happening. And a lot of times, the psychological markers that the children are facing might not be very, very apparent. Now, I'm not really sure how it is in the US, but in the UK, to basically get a psychology referral, the wait time is months, if not, you know, yeah, it's actually months. And even in that cases, there have been cases which weren't acute in the beginning. They became acute by the time the referral happened. Just because you know that's the demand, and at the end of the day, you want to put your head down and understand: is there a way of triaging this? Like, is there a way of kind of just making it easier so that if children really need something, or not just children, but yeah, I'm talking in specific to children because that's what my research is about. But in general, if somebody needs a psychological referral, if there's a way of triaging it that and making sure, okay, you know what, this person needs to get attended first, and then find this person, okay, it's not acute, maybe can benefit from these resources. So just having this sort of thing, maybe AI can help in that. Benefits of using robots. One of the additional things that children face, and I'm sure adults face as well, is this thing that they might get into trouble. So think of a scenario where, first of all, they might not understand what they're feeling. If they do understand, okay, they might not have the verbal ability to kind of explain it to them. If for some reason they can just, you know, verbal or non-verbally show that they are uncomfortable or distressed, they might feel like they'll get into trouble if they do talk about their well-being, you know, because they have a very limited understanding of the world as well. So they might feel like they might get into trouble if they talk to a teacher or say like another authority figure. So in that case, something like a robot can help because they do provide this engaging, non-intimidating environment, which, you know, can help them open up and be more candid about their well-being. And one of the things that robots or AI can be capable and equipped with is that they do not rely just on verbal information, like, like a phone would. They can rely on non-verbal information as well. And we'll talk about that extensively as we move forward. So some of the studies that I ran, and I'm not going to go into details, just to kind of give you context of where exactly I'm coming from. One of the studies was basically we got a bunch of kids and we asked them to come and interact with the robot. So that's the robot that you see is sitting in a room, and the robot would ask them questions about their well-being, and the children were just supposed to answer. And in that room, it was just the robot and the child who was present. And I'm just going to play a short video. I'm not going to play the whole thing, just to kind of give you context of how exactly it works.
Hi, my name is Mel. I am very excited to meet you. I am a robot, and this week I will be talking to you and other children like you to understand children better. I will be asking you a few questions, showing you a few pictures, and we are just going to chat about them. This is not a test or assessment to pass or fail. It is just a chat to find out about you. Is that okay? Please press the orange part of my right twist for yes. Otherwise, press the orange part of my left twist for no, and I can call Nida to explain again.
So this was some of the how the scenario looked to a particular child. I was obviously present in the adjacent room, just controlling everything and making sure everything is working. The parent could be present as well, should they choose to. And one of the things that we found out, one of the main findings, there were a lot of other findings, and the main findings for this particular study was that children, like when they spoke to a robot, they were like, the robot was able to better amplify the differences between different well-being groups. And if you were to consider the different methods that were used, it was robotized methods that was considered as the first one. Second one was how children self-reported on an online form. And thirdly is how their parents reported about their well-being. And that was one of our findings, that parents are a bit more optimistic about the well-being of their child than even the child's facing. Another thing that we did, and you can always ask this question, saying that, oh, you know what, to interact with the robot, you need to be present in Cambridge, you need to be present next to the robot. And that's a very valid question. You need to be present, and that creates problems of accessibility, because not everybody can travel to where the location is, or might not need to, and shouldn't have to as well, frankly speaking. So what we did was we basically made the robot go online. So like you were talking to me over Teams, the robot over video conferencing spoke to children all over the world. To be honest, it was a nightmare to arrange the particular study. I remember being in the lab at like 4:30 in the morning to cater to children in Australia who wanted to talk to the robot. But we wanted to see if we, if it's just the embodied aspect of it, like, they can touch the robot, they can tickle the robot, if that's what's causing them to be very happy and engaged and talking about their well-being. If you do put it online, say like on a screen, would the same effect persist? And one of the findings of that was, yes, it does help, and was very effective in the assessment of well-being of children. And we also wanted to see longitudinally, because that's the other thing that comes up. Robot, they interact for the first time, it's engaging, it's exciting, oh, it's all cool. Would that same effect persist, say like 6 months from now? Might not be the case. So we wanted to see longitudinally as well whether that effect persisted. And we saw from our studies that, yes, the overall perception either improved or basically remained the same, which was a major win in this particular case. So one of the things that I spoke about earlier is that robots obviously can help analyze what a person is talking, but one of the things that gives the robot a lot of power is its ability to basically analyze multimodal information as well. There are a lot of multimodal signals that a person can use. I have used two, and we'll talk about those extensively, but basically there is gestures, there's pose, there's just, a bunch of things that you can use, and they're all very relevant and can give you a lot of insight into a person's cognition. So one thing that I used was video features. So there's something called as action units. So what you see, I've mentioned two of them, and I'm not going to go into a lot of technical details, but something like an inner brow raiser. Now, when you have your brows being raised, that in combination with like your face being, like your mouth being open, shows, okay, surprised. That, you know, your nose wrinkling shows some sort of disgust. So all of these in combination, so these are basically muscles that are acting around your face, and that in combination can represent a bunch of different things. And there is something called as a facial action unit coding system, which kind of, you know, has all of this documented very well, to understand cognition from like a facial expression point of view. The other benefit of having videos was basically, you know, children are coming and they're interacting with the robot. Children don't really like a lot of sensors being put on them because obviously it's uncomfortable, it's annoying. So we wanted some sensors that were away from the body, but at the same time give us information. So obviously a camera is something that can do that. Another thing that can do that is a mic. So we tried to see whether, you know, the way a person is talking, like pitch, the duration that they spoke for, whether that can be related to a person's well-being. And we ran a bunch of statistical tests to see how, like children who have different well-being levels, how do the action units change, whether there is any change, whether it is even needed, whether there is some pattern to see, or are we just imagining it, and how does that affect? And one of the things that we found out was that children who are less likely to have well-being concerns, they were more expressive when they were talking to a robot, as compared to children who are more likely to have well-being concerns. That was one of the findings of this particular work. But obviously, when you have all of this information, you want to see whether embodied AI or AI can understand children's well-being just by how they behave and not what they say. Because as we've established, at times, you know, what they're saying might not be what they're feeling. Like, for example, if you have two children who give you the same answer, like say child A saying, I'm fine, and child B saying, I'm fine. Now, if you were to just take what is given and like say, put this in even ChatGPT for that matter, it would rate it the same because, you know, it's saying, I'm fine. But you know from the picture that those two children are vastly different. And the reason for that is their nonverbal behavior and how they're showing I'm fine. So this is one of the ways, because, you know, AI and robots are amazing at pattern recognition. So if they could be trained to kind of analyze these little signals and not just based on what the child is saying, it opens up, you know, and gives you a more holistic overview of their well-being. So some of the things,
Nida,
yeah.
There is a question in chat. What about children who are neurodiverse? Did that change how you programmed the robot's facial interaction?
So sorry, I can't see the chat because I can only see my thing. So Sonali, yeah, I'll rely on you to just, and please feel free to stop me anytime. So we haven't really seen, looked into neurodivergent children. The idea was to start with children who are neurotypical and then develop the study as this goes on. So my PhD thesis was basically initially just based on neurotypical children. And I think now the follow-up, the student who's working on would be looking into other groups, like not just, so in my case, it was 8 to 13-year-olds. They'll be looking at more adolescents and young adults, and they'll be looking at other neurodivergent children. But yes, to answer your question, yes, that would change, and that would definitely change how we conduct the experiment. That would change how the kind of questions we asked, and that would change how they respond to it as well. You can't just put all of them in one mixing pot, because yeah, that would be vastly different. And even from the neurotypical children that we saw, and we'll talk about this in detail, the 8-year-olds were vastly different from a 13-year-old. Girls were different from boys. So we saw a lot of differences even within them as well. But so this was like the first step that we took. And I'm hoping that the next step would make this a bit more accessible to everybody. So
thank you.
the AI pipeline, thank you so much. The AI pipeline that we followed, and that's why I went into the studies a little bit, because otherwise it would be difficult to understand. From the two studies that we ran, we took the nonverbal data. So from the remote longitudinal one, we didn't have the audio data just because technical issues and, audio was coming in. Video was also difficult, but it was still salvageable, but audio was coming in and stopping in. So it was very difficult to kind of actually get some information out of it. So we decided to discard the audio entirely, but we did have the video data, which we used forward in the study too. And we fed this information to an AI model called as Llama. So this is Meta's AI model, a group of AI models that they're using, the large language models. And the reason why we used Llama and not some of the others like, DeepSeek or GPT is because Llama, you can host it locally. So the data that I had was children's data. So first of all, it was children's data. So obviously ethics was very, very hard. And secondly, it was children's data related to like sensitive information about their well-being. So you can't, especially in terms of my ethics, you can't really put it online. I couldn't use any of the online, even for transcribing, I had to use everything offline or something that can be locally hosted. Sometimes I manually had to transcribe some of the things, some of the interviews, because it was just so difficult to kind of just get anything meaningful out of the algorithms used. So we wanted something that can be locally hosted. So basically it doesn't connect to the internet, is not used for training on the other models just because of the ethics. And Llama is one of those models that can be used. You can practically, download it on your own laptop and try using it. And it might not be the most advanced, but for our specific work, it was the most advanced that we used. So we fed all of this information to Llama and we asked whether it could predict well-being just based on the facial action unit or just based on the pitch. How does it predict? And then we also asked another question, whether age and gender does, if we do provide, because everybody out there, when they talk about AI, they're like, AI doesn't have context. And that's true. If it doesn't see the whole picture, it'll give you more of like, sometimes even a wishy-washy answer. So we did provide it some demographic context about the age of the child and the gender of the child. And we wanted to see how does that kind of change its predictions about the well-being. And one of the key takeaways were, yes, nonverbal cues do hold valuable information to kind of understand well-being, and Llama was able to predict well-being using that. And when we included some of the demographic context, it did improve the performance. But, there were many challenges that remained. The accuracy was very limited. Part of the reason for that was the model that I used was basically a Llama model that I hosted on my laptop, because that was one of the strengths. But obviously a bigger, better model might improve the accuracy. If you could definitely use, if it could connect to, like, say, some of the other servers, like, GPT, maybe the accuracy would be better. But even for Llama, the one that I used was just, I think, 8 billion parameters or something. But there are more heavier models which would be able to, but for that you need more computational power. So there was limited accuracy, which was partly because of the model, partly because of the data that we were providing. The model did have a tendency to kind of over-predict some labels, because again, it was relying on its own information and often struggled with ambiguous cases. If you had inconclusive cues, or if there were two conflicting cues, it did struggle with that a bit. Performance, obviously, when you are inputting data, it depends on how the quality of data is. And we also saw that there were some disparities, actually. While there was an improvement in the model accuracy, there were disparities that were amplified for certain gender groups that were there. It didn't just stop here, because one of the strengths of LLMs is the explainability, which I've also written in the abstract. You don't just, up until now, machine learning, you feed some data, it's like a black box, it'll input out some of the predictions, which is what machine learning and deep learning is. It might be very good at doing it, but you don't know why it made that decision, or why exactly did it do it? Why exactly did it, in the case of good or bad, you don't know. It just learned from the data, understood something, and gave out a prediction. But in the case of LLMs, and you can try this out even when you're conversing with Claude or Copilot next time, you can ask them, oh, why do you think this happened? Or why do you give this reasoning for it? So that's what we did. We asked Llama, okay, what is the reason for that particular prediction, to understand what went behind, or was it just randomly throwing out some labels at us? So when we didn't give a demographic context, when it was just, this is the data, what is the well-being, there was a very, very heavy reliance on some of the action units, obviously based on previous literature, psychology literature, and very, very heavy reliance of, they might infer positive engagement. And because of this, I said, the model said, because of this, I gave this particular prediction, because these particular action units or this particular thing was working. Pitch was often considered as a tiebreaker and often used to like kind of, when we asked the model, they said, oh yeah, we had these conflicting AUs, but when we took pitch into consideration of the child, we, this was what we found. And that's why we gave this particular label. But obviously inconclusive signs or signs that were conflicting even after all of this reasoning, the model almost always kind of resorted to like a safe middle ground. And that's why we had a lot of like medium. So in my case, it was like low, medium, and high. We had a lot of medium well-being predictions, because if it couldn't tell, it would just say, okay, yeah, it's medium, because that's what it was in the safety, just wanted to be safe. So AI is observed that it does follow when we did ask for, oh, explain your reasoning, it does follow some level of, it's not just randomly coming up with, oh, this must be high, this must be low, this must be medium. It does follow some sort of reasoning. It is going into looking at the nonverbal data and saying, okay, you know what, this particular AU is occurring with this particular AU. So maybe there's some sort of engagement, and that's why engagement usually means that, there might be the well-being might be high or something like that. So when you read the explanations, you do see that there's some sort of human reasoning that's happening in making predictions, not just randomly allocating stuff. When we did provide a demographic context, things got really interesting, because when we provided it with age, it relied a lot on like developmental norms, so how a 8-year-old child should behave, how a 9-year-old child, and that's what it used to kind of make its predictions. The predictions did change for the same child, so obviously providing that particular context did give it that little bit of extra push. When it came to gender, I think from what I remember, I think when we provided just the gender, that was the highest accuracy that we got out of all the different things that we considered. No demographics, age, gender, or just gender. So when we just gave a gender, we did see that there was quite, the accuracy was high. But I did feel like when you read the explanations, because obviously we asked the model, why did you choose this? There was a lot of like emotional, like there was a lot of societal and norms that were kind of like perpetuated in its reasoning. Say for instance, emotional expression and the way an emotion is being expressed in one particular gender was normalized, but in another gender it was penalized. Like say for instance, in case of boys, I remember this case, if there was overt smiling, say like those smiling AUs were activated, it wasn't necessarily given a high well-being unless there were a bunch of other things that were there as well. So it led to like additional scrutiny. Whereas in case of girls, if they were just smiling, the model gave it like, oh yeah, they're smiling, they're happy, fine. Let's give this rating. So obviously that particular bit, those kind of societal expressions were kind of perpetuated in its reasoning. Which is something to be careful about as well, because we don't want the biases that are there to get perpetuated and then amplified. So it does enhance and it does improve the accuracy, but there was these disparities that we saw when we did provide it with the demographic context. So one of the take-home messages from today's talk is obviously there needs to be very heavy calibration and scrutiny when AI makes these kind of predictions in sensitive settings, because bear in mind, AI, while it's intelligent, is relying entirely on the information that it has. And whatever that information is, that is what it's going to use. It's not going to think for itself, because that's not what it does. It just uses that information, might have like billions of parameters to kind of help it. So it might look like it's thinking like a human, but at the end of the day, it is just working on what it has. It's not coming up with things by itself. Which brings me to the last bit of the talk, whether we need embodied AI and AI in general to make these heavy decisions in sensitive settings. Like in my case is mental well-being, but in your case it could be cancer related as well. Whether we need, at what level do we bring AI in? Because we do see potential, but especially in terms of safeguarding, if like say a patient or somebody enters and you have like an AI robot that's helping them navigate the hospitals. Oh, you need to go here for your blood test, you need to go there, the nurse would be doing this. What the patient or what the individual might say in front of the doctor might be different from what they're thinking, their distress. AI might notice, like say if a child is talking to an AI agent in a school setting, and it notices that there is bruises on its arm, but it's saying, I'm fine, I'm fine. What is the AI's responsibility? What is the robot's responsibility? Should it just go with what the child is saying? Or should it think for itself and be like, okay, I need to escalate this, and this is triggering some sort of safeguarding, which in the US I've been told is called mandated reporting. What is the responsibility of that agent? Because it's not a laptop, it's not a toaster where it's not doing anything. There is a social element, which means there is some social responsibility. But how does that work? So we asked a bunch of experts from psychology, from robotics, from psychiatry, and from child tech, what they think AI or robots' responsibility is, especially when it comes to safeguarding children and when it comes to children sharing or them coming to know about some sort of information that might be troubling, and there might be a need to call up other care network of the child. So the experts told us, well, the robots are amazing at observing, at pattern recognition, at obviously, because of the information they have, flagging concerns, but they should not at any point of time decide when the abuse has occurred or replace clinicians or make any kind of mandated reporting decisions, because obviously these decisions contain reputational harm. They are very, very serious. So they shouldn't be independently deciding these. So basically the idea is robots support, but humans at the end of the day, they decide. And we also wanted to know how does robots and AI actually fit into the whole childcare network. So you would think about it, they're in schools, they're in hospitals, they're everywhere, basically in homes as well. How does it fit into this whole childcare network when it comes to understanding, safeguarding, or even when it comes to just observing what's happening around the child? So for that purpose, we asked about 22 stakeholders, community stakeholders. These were educators, these were people in healthcare, there were people in social services, they were lawyers. So we asked them, because these were the people who will be using these particular tools at the end of the day in their respective spaces. What are their concerns? What are their hesitancies? But at the end of the day, what do they feel about, say, if they come to know of something, what should the robot do? Should the robot report to somebody, report directly to the CPS, report directly to the hiring manager, report directly to the manager who's a bit higher? These questions are important, and the reason why they're important to ask is because once they become the norm, once these technologies are everywhere, because they are kind of becoming prevalent, if you ask these questions later, then it kind of starts becoming like it leads to more catastrophic events. And one of these things, we do see that happening, where a lot of children, not just children, a lot of people are talking to AI agents like GPT from an emotional point of view, and because it's responding like a human way, there is that sense that, okay, it's been, but that's not what it is. It's just responding based on the data that it has. And it's something I think one of the CEOs of these AI firms said, that you shouldn't talk about your mental health, because at the end of the day, it's not going to do anything. So if you need it, you need. So, but these things are coming up because children would use it, people would use it for emotional expression as well, and that's why these questions need to be answered. So some of the things that the stakeholders told us when we were talking about different agencies that an AI can have is what we asked them, okay, do you want to have AI or robots in your space, or should you not have it at all? And like, I think almost all of them said, no, we do see the potential of them being in our spaces. It's just to what degree is what they differed in. And then we went to the other end of the spectrum and we asked them, should the robot or AI directly called like Child Protective Services or something? Should they directly make that judgment? And they were like, no, that's not right as well. So most of it, something that the lawyer that we interviewed actually said, it falls in the it depends category. And the things that they were comfortable with were like, okay, robots and AI can have more like a distractor, an entertainer, just to kind of reduce anxiety, that kind of role. Or they can be conversational agents and have more proactive role, but the actual decision should be made by the human. So it should be transparent on why they're making a decision. The human should have complete control and oversight, so that these design considerations were prioritized. And then they said, okay, yeah, with this we do feel comfortable with it being in our spaces. So I'd just like to end with a short video. It's just about a minute long. It talks about, because we're talking about AI, robots, space in like well-being. And one of the pipelines, I've just described one of these pipelines of well-being assessment in the UK. I'm sure it's different in the US, it's different. There are different pipelines. It's not standardized in the UK as well. But just to kind of explain where we hope robots or AI could be placed in the whole well-being network. So it's just a short video. So that's my friend Alex, and he's saying hi. Like a lot of children his age, Alex often sometimes feels sad. So families like Alex's could be reached through schools, or they could be reached through the National Patient Register. And once the consent has been obtained, there is a date that's been booked for Alex's assessment. And like a lay interviewer can guide Alex through the online questionnaires. And then obviously it's a clinician who makes where the real diagnosis occurs, and they're the ones who make it. But alternatively, if we do place like a robot or an AI agent in the assessment pipeline, we're hoping the robot could guide Alex through the assessment and not just take his verbal data into consideration, but also like the non-verbal information that is being displayed. And obviously use this to flag concerns so the clinician can have a more comprehensive understanding of Alex's well-being. So both pipelines would lead to an assessment of Alex's well-being, but obviously with timely support, kids like Alex can really, really thrive in a supportive environment. So thank you, Alex, for your time, and thank you so much, everybody, for listening and for engaging and for being a part of this.
Thank you, Nida. This was awesome. Thank you for walking us through all this work that you have done. And it is a critical need, right? Because we don't have sufficient resources to get to everybody in time. So one of the things that robots can do is to scale. So that is, it'll be great to have some assistance in filling this need. So this is wonderful and very valuable work that you are doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
so I have a few questions. So one thing I want to kind of understand a little bit is that when you are capturing all this multimodal data, and then the end product is to say that the the well-being high, medium, low. So let's say that's the goal. But are you kind of funneling it through these action unit like elements, or are you just feeding all of that data directly? Because the models today can just take the whole data and then classify, right? Like you don't have to say that this means this action unit, and then your final classifier is based on the action unit. So how are you doing it technically?
So yes, your question, and that's a very, very good question. The data was actually recorded. As I said, there was a camera and a microphone that was there, and it was recording the session when they visited the robot, or they spoke to the robot online. One of the reasons why I used action units, or this audio information, and yes, you're right, you could just directly just feed the audio information, or you could directly feed the video information, and the models of today are very good at analyzing it. But I think it all comes down to how comfortable parents are about having their children's data, especially pictures, videos, voice being used for this. They were much more comfortable, we felt, and I'm a parent as well, because when you extract all this information, when you extract action units, when you extract pitch, all of this information, you can essentially just discard the videos that you have. So all then this data becomes anonymous, and it can't go back. Like there's no way of taking the action unit and going back to the child's face unless you can actually provide, like, this was the child and these are the action units. Then maybe an AI model might be able to sketch it back. But if you don't provide that initial photo, it's just basically numbers. So what we're trying to do is to feed it to, and from like an ethics point of view, yes, if you just put the raw data in, maybe, and yes, a lot of models now are doing this and they are capable of analyzing it. It's just from like an ethical point of view, we wanted to just extract everything there is to extract from the data, discard the data, and then just use that going forward, so that there's no going back to identifying the child, especially through their face or voice. So that was the reason why I used it. Obviously, if that's not a concern, then yes, using raw videos might prove to be even beneficial, or maybe even more accurate in some cases.
Thank you, Nida. Yeah, privacy and ethics is an important concern. Are there other questions? Thank you. So
I'm gonna stop sharing now. Yeah.
sure. There's a comment. Bravo, Nida.
I have put my email address, but I will share my email address and LinkedIn with, I think Sonali already has it. If you guys have more questions coming up later, feel free to drop in, and I'm happy to kind of have a chat. We can also think of potential, if you think of other collaborations or something, we can definitely think around this point of this line of inquiry as well. Something to look into. As you said, AI is on everybody's lips. Definitely we can find some ways in which we can bridge the two things together.
Thanks, Nida. So I'm curious, what's next for you now that you've finished this PhD on this topic? Are you continuing to work in a similar field?
So right now I'm taking a break because my PhD, and I also, as I said, I had my baby in my last year of PhD. So while I was working on my thesis, I was simultaneously having a 1-year-old as well. So quite intense. So just basically taking a break at the moment. But yeah, I mean, I am really passionate, to be honest, about responsible AI and like implementing that in more sensitive settings, healthcare, those kind of settings. So I think moving forward, I would definitely be looking into like responsible AI implementation, societal impacts of this, and just the long-term impacts of this in general. And that's the area that I'm interested in. I did enjoy really working with children as well, to be honest. My PhD viva was easier to answer than some of the questions that came up when the children visited the lab. Oh, does a robot get a headache? Oh, is it angry with me? Did I do something wrong? And you're just like, no, 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 you're fine, you're okay. It was a joy to work with because they're just so excited about everything. So I did enjoy a lot, like working with children. Um, yeah, so maybe going forward, it would be something that would be the space that I would be looking at.
Thank you. There is another comment. Thank you for taking such care around the children's security. So I should like all the parents and society in general, I'm sure would appreciate this eye to responsible AI, to privacy and security. Uh, John? Oh, sorry. I
Oh,
thought John had a question. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So thank. Yeah.
I think he left. He was saying that he's
Yes,
leaving.
yes, yes. So, yeah, thank you for that. So, there are organizations like CHAI, Coalition for Healthcare AI, and others that are working in the field of responsible AI. So, I'm sure it's a good luck for your next adventures. And maybe we are ready to end for today, unless there are any last questions. Happy Independence Day, everybody, and see you next month. Thank you, Nida.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.